Hello and welcome to the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC on ESPN 23, also known as UFC Vegas 25. I'm your host, Ben Duffy of Sherdog.com. With me here, as usual, is Keith Schillen. Keith is the executive producer of the Sherdog Radio Network, as well as the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network. He is a contributor to Sherdog with such shows as MMA Past, Present, and Future, and of course the Schillen and Duffy Show, of which he is the usual host, but I take the chair for these previews. It is my pleasure to have him here. How are you doing this evening, Keith?
I'm doing good, man. We got an interesting card to break down. I'm really excited about the main event. I'm excited for some of the guys that are sprinkled out throughout, and all in all, like there isn't a lot of gaps between guys. There isn't one guy that this guy's a huge favorite. So I'm excited about that part of this card. So I'm ready to get into it. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. I have no interest in recapping UFC 261 any further. You and I already did 2 hours on that on fight night. But after a card just that big, that kind of electrifying and shocking in some of the results we saw, there's bound to be a little bit of feeling of hangover when you just go back to, all right, it's just another card this week. But I mean, even by the standards of just another card, I'm looking at the undercard here. So 6-fight undercard, 12 total fighters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 of them are under 500 in the UFC. Over half the fighters on the undercard are below 500 in the UFC. There's another 1, 2, 3 that are either 500 in the UFC or debuting. So for those, who need to do their math at home, I think there are 2 fighters on the whole undercard that are above 500 in the UFC. Having said that, though, there aren't any on really terrible losing streaks. So we have a lot of fighters who are motivated but not desperate. Like for an undercard this mediocre, just, say it frankly, the cut list might actually be kind of short this weekend. Well, I guess we'll see. We'll talk about that Saturday night. But unless you have any general comments about this one, I'm just going to jump right into the prelims here.
All right, yeah, let's get started.
Okay, right out the gate, we have a featherweight matchup that sort of came together at the last minute as other fights fell apart. It is Luke Sanders versus Felipe Diaz-Colares. Sanders had been scheduled to take on Damon Jackson on this card. Colares was going to take on Journey Newson. Instead, with both those other fights falling out, they will meet one another in a fight that, to me, arguably is more closely matched and more interesting than either of the other two. Sanders, the 35-year-old out of Tennessee, is 13-4 overall. He is 3-4 since joining the UFC, and I was shocked to realize, as I was doing research for this card, that Luke Sanders has been in the UFC for over 5 years. It just he feels like a new guy in the UFC to me because due to injuries and other things, he's just been fighting like once a year. So I was like, oh my goodness, he fought Maximo Blanco, and that was a little shock to me.
I'm pretty sure that one was in Boston, and I was there in attendance.
That
was on the Cruz Dillashaw card.
Yes, yeah, January 2016. It's been a while.
Yeah, and that fact that he's 35 is surprising. Like he still kind of feels like a prospect, but the guy's 35.
Yeah. I mean, still under, well under 20 fights total in his career. So there is that bit of feel about him. He's going to take on Colares. The 27-year-old Brazilian is 9-2 overall. He is 1-2 in the UFC. He fought just once last year, and it was all the way back in January of 2020. He lost a somewhat competitive decision to Montel Jackson at that one. Odds in this one do slightly favor Sanders. He is out there around -150 or -155. You can get Colares at +135 or so. Keith, the curtain jerker here, it's unlikely to get the insane reaction of the curtain jerker at UFC 261. That's probably going to be kind of quiet in the Apex, but who comes out with the win?
Well, this is an interesting matchup. I'll say that. It, like you said, I mean, it's a curtain jerker on a fight night card that isn't star-studded, but I think it's going to be a fun matchup based on their styles. Now, Sanders, again, he's a guy who has a prospect field, though he's definitely not a prospect. He also had a buzz a long time ago. Like, he was a guy that people were excited about. And when you look at his skill set, he's southpaw. He's a very aggressive striker. If he gets in the pocket, he can unload big shots. He's got some good power in there. He marches forward. His straight left is his best below. He's got some power, but he does much better being the bull than being the a matador, as he likes to be the one pressing the action. He doesn't really like being pressed. His style is funny though, because he wants to get in the pocket and let his hands go, but he doesn't have good head movement in the pocket, so he gets tagged a lot. And he's been rocked in so many fights. I mean, like pretty much like his last 5 fights, he's been hurt, rocked. He's a good grappler, but he doesn't use it enough. And I would say he's just an okay wrestler and okay at BJJ. Like he can get you down, he can submit you, but I wouldn't say he's strong at either one. I'd say he's like competent. Though he was submitted in his last match. Now move over to, and I like how you said his name. I don't know if I can say it with as good as you did. Colares.
Colares, yeah.
Colares, yeah. You have you're closer to Mexico than I am, so you you do it better than I am. One thing I'll say about this guy, like he's not talented, but he's so freaking tough. And I mean, obviously he's talented. He's in the UFC, but I mean, like when I say he's not talented, I'm talking about on a UFC level. You know, he's not Petrian. That's what I mean by it. The dude's tough as hell. I mean, all you gotta do is look at his last fight, and if you watch his fight against Montel Jackson beat the brakes off of him, and he just kept going, and he made me a fan because I'm like, dude, just quit, man. Like every round was 10-8, and he just kept coming. He kept coming with a high volume and constantly moving forward. And then you watch all his fights, and he's like that all the time. He's got some long legs, and he uses those well to kick, but he follows his kicks. You know, he won't kick and stay on the outside. He kicks to follow it with his own strikes. I haven't seen much of a grappling game from him offensively, but he did hit a Japanese wizard, which is a high-level judo / wrestling move that you see, which is fun to see. I don't know the last time I've seen a Japanese wizard in MMA since Joe Stevenson did one against Luke Kumo on the I think it was season 2 of the Ultimate Fighter finale. He's got weak takedown defense, and he makes it worse by jumping to a guillotine. Like he kept doing that against Montel Jackson, but he has a good get-up game. He was hard to hold down, but he gives up his back, which could be a problem against someone like Luke Sanders. So this could be a matchup where both guys are fighting for the job. I'm not really sure. I think Colares is going to make it entertaining with his nonstop action and his never say die attitude. However, I think Sanders, though I didn't even realize he was 35 until you said it. I knew he was older than I thought, and that definitely makes me more worried now. And I wasn't confident in picking him to begin with, but he's in a weight class where age doesn't. You know, the older you get, it's not heavyweight. It's age matters. 35 matters. But I think he can get inside, land some heavy shots, win some wrestling exchanges. But I think it's going to be some fun scrambles. I think it's back for. I almost picked this fight right off the start to be my fight of the night. But I'm going to end up taking Sanders by decision.
Great. I feel a lot of the same things you do here. My concern with Sanders, I mean, other than the fact that he is now moving into his mid-30s in a lighter weight class, that he's been injured, you know, and that his game has run on plus athleticism, you know, a lot of the time. My other concern with him is he sort of has an off button. When I look at his losses in the UFC, they're usually fights he was winning. And you mentioned that he's very hittable, that he takes a strike that either just ends the fight or changes the whole complexion of the fight. Like most recently, I thought he was handling Nathan Maness. And then Maness came out in the second round, lost maybe the first 30 or 45 seconds of that round, then just hit him with like kind of a hook or something that rocked him a little bit. And it was all downhill from there. And he couldn't recover. Maness was all over him. And I feel the same way about, his early loss to Yuri Alcantara. I thought he was winning that fight until he lost it. Hani Yahya is the only guy I can think of that just ran straight through him, and that's Hani Yahya. Luckily for Sanders, Colares, he hasn't shown me that he has that in his arsenal. Like, even if he hits Sanders a few times, he's not a huge puncher or kicker. You know, he's much more of an opportunist on the ground. So I'm with you. Give me Sanders in a fun, entertaining fight here. Probably a lot of kind of scramble heavy groundwork because Colares is like Sanders will shoot takedowns and Colares will accept them probably by grabbing a guillotine and just jumping the guard, like you said. I'm picking Sanders not to actually get tapped by any of those, spend some good time on top, maybe get swept a few times. This should be a real fun one, but give me Sanders by decision as well. Next up on the UFC Vegas 25 prelims, it is Greece versus Canada as Andreas Michailidis and KB Bhullar both seek to rebound from losses in their respective UFC debuts. Michailidis, the 32-year-old Greek, is 12-4 overall. He is 0-1 in the UFC, having debuted at UFC on ESPN 13 last July and gotten beaten to a doctor stoppage between rounds by Modestas Bukauskas. He'll be taking on Bhullar. The 29-year-old Canadian is 8-1 overall. He is 0-1 in the UFC, having debuted last October at UFC Fight Night Moraes versus Sandhagen and gotten knocked out in short order by Tom Breese. The odds heavily favor Michailidis here. He is minus 250, where Bhullar is around plus 210. I look at these two guys, and I see some general similarities in their game. They're, both strikers by preference. Michailidis, more of an outstriker by preference. Bhullar, in spite of being like such a tall and lanky light heavyweight, is more of a come forward guy. Comes forward, likes to, pressure for the counter. I saw a lot of feints from him in the very brief appearance he had against Breese, where basically it was a 2-minute fight. He won the first minute and he lost the last minute. But I am not sure that Bhullar, I don't think he's good enough to make his game work against UFC light heavyweights is the easiest way I can put it. I don't see that at this point in his development based on the few fights in Canada I saw and the one fight against Breese. I'm not sure he's UFC material at this point, where I do still hold out hope that Michailidis is. Michailidis, he ran into Modestas Bukauskas in his debut, a guy that wants to do mostly the same things, but is taller, greater reach. And while I don't think Bukauskas is any great shakes either, he at least had a few UFC bouts under his belt and just was more comfortable in there. I think maybe if these guys fight in a year, Michailidis beats Bukauskas. I think on Saturday, he definitely beats Bhullar. If you want to call this the lock of the night, I think he has a pretty easy night of work, and I'm going to say he knocks him out. You know what? I'm going to say he knocks him out in the first round. Bhullar likes to come forward. He's not going to like what he gets back. Michailidis by first round TKO.
Wow. You pulled out the lock of the night early. I love it. I almost pulled out the fight of the night early. But so I'm going to go with Michailidis first, break down him, just because you've been saying his name and it's on my tongue. So I think I can pronounce it correctly. And I didn't want to take a chance of doing Bhullar first. I think your breakdown was really, really solid. A lot of the notes that I was going over are very similar notes. Michailidis is not a great athlete. That's the thing that I saw from him. Kind of a thudding kind of guy. Probably a guy in high school, if he was American, he'd be more of the D tackle than the running back kind of thing. but like the D tackle who's constantly has a big piece of grass hanging from his helmet that he won't take out, and it's January and it's -10 outside and he refuses to wear sleeves. I feel like he's that kind of guy. He hits hard, as you point out. You're picking him to get an early knockout. He hits hard, a lot of kicks, a lot of hard kicks. I like that he targets the calf kicks. And I also like that, as you mentioned, that both strikers, we have seen Michailidis look for takedowns. And just by, even though he's not a strong wrestler, having the threat of takedowns will open up other strikes. Though, from some fights I've seen in the regional scene, we didn't see it in the UFC, but in the regional scene, he's gassed out deep. And that's probably because he loads up on everything. Move over to Bhullar. Southpaw, as you mentioned, he's a long and lengthy guy. I've noticed through my breakdowns, I talk about how much guys switch stances, and I've been really trying to take out switch stances because it just became such a part of MMA that when I talk about people switch stances, now I'm only going to try to talk about guys who really fight from both stances for long periods of time. And that actually what Bhullar does. He likes to switch stances and fight from both, but he's not that good at either stance, if I'm being honest. His boxing needs improvement. He throws a lot of arm punches, not a lot of power. He keeps his hands low, give himself a big target. He's his little stationary target with his chin high. Though he throws a lot of kicks, that's his game. Kicks, hard kicks, but he wastes energy like throwing flashy stuff that don't work. Like he'll do like a spinning wheel kick that misses by 6 feet. Like he'll just waste his energy doing stupid stuff like that. But he's also gassed out himself in fights. I'm not nearly as confident as you as I'm not as high on Michailidis as you are. I think this is a battle where both guys could be fighting for a spot in the UFC. I am going to go with Michailidis because when I look at them, I see Michailidis as a low-level UFC talent. Like he looks like someone who could be on the Contender Series or where he is right now in the bottom of a fight night. I don't really see that with Bhullar. Like I feel like Bhullar got his contract being at the right place at the right time. So I think he catches Bhullar, and I'll say, you said first round? Okay, yep. So I originally put first round in my notes too, but to break it up, I'll go second round.
We move all the way down to the strawweight division for a meeting between Konklak Suphisara, who we will call Loma Lookboonmee for the remainder of this program, and Sam Hughes. Lookboonmee, the 25-year-old, the first Thai fighter in the UFC, is 5-2 in her brief thus far mixed martial arts career. She is 2-1 in the UFC. She'll be taking on Hughes, who is also 5-2 overall. She's a 28-year-old who is 0-1 in the UFC, having gotten beaten into a corner stoppage between rounds by Tecia Torres back in December. The odds heavily favor Loma Lookboonmee here. She is minus 375. Hughes around plus 315 or so. In one of the columns that I wrote coming into fight week, I listed Loma as one of a handful of fighters who's under a little additional pressure to really perform in this fight. She has all the makings of a UFC star. She's a multi-time world Muay Thai champ. She is aggressive and has a fast pace, even by the standards of 115-pound Muay Thai fighters, which is saying a lot. She has just kind of a charming enthusiasm to her, which, it'll only help as she sticks around, if she continues to improve her English. The only part really missing is she needs to beat decent strawweights. And her problem is that she's an atomweight in a division or in a promotion that doesn't have an atomweight division. I mean, we'll be talking next week about Michelle Waterson, who has carved out a surprisingly strong resume in the UFC despite being a natural atomweight, but she's the exception. Generally speaking, it has been tough sledding for atomweights that have been pulled up to the UFC. I mean, look at Jinh Fry. She went from being one of the top 3 atomweights in the world to being right on the verge of getting cut from the UFC within about a 2-year span. Like she probably saved her job last month when she won.
I would say, sorry to interrupt you, Tecia Torres probably too.
Absolutely. Like Tecia Torres is one that I just don't think of her as an atomweight because she's been in the UFC so long, but she's tiny.
But the point is saying, despite them two girls having success, there's a ceiling to this because of the size advantage.
Well, yeah, exactly. Because even if these people, Tecia Torres, who, I mean, she has a brawniness and explosion and physicality to her that a lot of these other women don't. But even if these women survive and hold on to the roster spot, at the top of that mountain is someone like Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Do you know how silly, like, the size differential? We've seen it. We've seen when Joanna has taken on some of these tiny strawweights.
And sorry to interrupt you again. Torres has never actually fought an atomweight, I believe. I think we just kind of look at her and say, "Oh, she'd make atomweight."
Yeah, because she looks about the size of, one of them. Anyway, I feel as though this is a bit of a setup fight for her. I mean, Hughes has some potential. She has some bright spots, but really she's been beaten badly by the two UFC level fighters she's fought. She lost to Vanessa Demopoulos, got highlight reeled by her back in LFA, and that was the fight that got Demopoulos onto the Contender Series. But even there, I mean, she was losing the fight until she got a inverted triangle choked, and then Tisha Torres just crushed her. Easy 10-8 round, just beat the crap out of her. So I don't, even though Hughes is more of a real strawweight in size, I think this is just a bad setup fight. I don't think she's going to be able to just bully Loma around like Angela Hill was able to and stop her from doing what she wants to do. So I'm expecting a Muay Thai clinic from Loma. We're going to see lots of just lightning fast kicks to the legs and body. If they get into the clinch, I don't think Hughes is going to be able to protect herself the way someone like Hill was able to, and she's going to start eating elbows and short punches and knees. I don't know about a finish. I'll believe in Loma's finishing ability against UFC size strawweights when I see it, but give me Loma Lookboonmee by a very impressive looking unanimous decision.
Yeah, so Loma, the thing about being an atomweight fighting at strawweight is you can use some advantage to it, and the big advantage is having a speed advantage, and that's what you see with Loma. Like, she's already going to be a fast striker based on her background in Muay Thai, but she looks really fast. Like, you take her last fight. I don't know if it's her last fight, but the Junior Fry fight was the one that keeps. I think that was the last fight. I should pull these records up before you because I always refer to fights, and then I'm always like, "That's that last fight," or no, or was like, or was that the last fight I watched today of them? But she's got fast hands. She has fast kicks. She has that, as you mentioned, she has a Muay Thai style. So a lot of her strikes come from the traditional Muay Thai, like, favorites. Like, she loves the teep kick out the middle, which you see a lot in Muay Thai. And she's got a killer plum clinch. Going back to the Junior Fry fight. Junior Fry is, even though she's an atomweight, she's a physically imposing figure. Like, she's got muscle on muscle. She's ripped. She's like the best abs in MMA. Yeah. and she still couldn't get out of the plum clinch because Lookboonmee, she gets the right angle. She pushes against the cage. She frames and creates enough space to start landing in close elbows, start landing in close knees, and she brutalized you there. They're not slicing, they're not ricocheting, they're thudding shots. The one weakness is, obviously, you said she can be out-muscled, but it's her takedown defense. Like, I've seen her taken down, and I haven't seen improvement there yet. Now, move over to Sam Hughes. I think I'm a little higher in Sam Hughes than you are. The Demopoulos fight, I actually thought she was winning that fight. Yeah, I mean, early on, I don't remember how, was she winning when she got triangle choke? What's it come from? I remember thinking she was doing very well. I could be wrong.
Well, and to be fair, I haven't watched the complete fight since the night it happened.
Sure.
I might be wrong.
Yeah. Hughes is a composed striker. Like, she stays pretty composed. Good boxing, I would say, mostly boxing. I like her vision. She seems like she sees punches coming at her and she reacts pretty well. I'd say fast hand speed, nice jab, good overall movement, mix it in leg kicks, mix it in takedowns. But I haven't seen much on the ground from her, either offensively, and then when I've seen her defensively, she got, like you mentioned, she got submitted by Vanessa Demopoulos, who I'm not that high on at all as a prospect going forward. So who do I think is going to win? Now, you're saying this is a setup fight. I don't feel that way, and the reason why I don't feel that way is for one reason only. Now, Lookboonmee is over a 3-1 favorite. I mean, she's a massive favorite. However, as you mentioned, she is always undersized, but it might be even bigger in this fight because Lookboonmee is a former atomweight. Hughes is a former flyweight. So there actually is a 2 weight class difference for them at one point. Now, I'm not saying she might have been undersized. Probably she was undersized flyweight. That's why she's fighting down. But that's the big thing. Skill-wise, I agree with you. Lookboonmee looks like the better fighter. I'm going to go with Lookboonmee based on Tisha Torres being undersized and still was able to use her speed. In fairness, Hughes took the fight like that week. in her UFC one, it's her UFC debut. Two, it's she's taking on short notice. Three, she's getting Tisha Torres in her debut. So it's like 3 strikes. She didn't have it. But Labume can mimic Torres's speed. She can move her footwork. And in fairness, she probably has a little more offensive tools in the striking realm that Torres doesn't have. And the other thing that stands out to me is when you want to really lean on your size advantage, you go to the clinch. Do you want to go to the clinch against Labumi? It could be a big problem. So I'll take Labumi. I think Hughes is tough. I'm going to say that Hughes survives. Give me Labumi by decision.
Next up, it's the featherweights as Kamaka III takes on TJ Brown. Kamaka, the 26-year-old Hawaiian, is 8-3 overall. He's 1-1 in the UFC. He debuted last year. He won his debut over Tony Kelly at UFC 252 in August, then came back and got knocked out in the closing seconds of the second round by Jonathan Pearce at UFC on ESPN 18 in November. Pearce, of course, who appears right after him on this card. He'll be taking on Brown. The 30-year-old is 14-8 overall. He is 0-2 since joining the UFC out of season 3 of Dana White's Contender Series back in 2019. He lost to Jordan Griffin, getting choked all the way out with a guillotine last February. Came back and lost a unanimous decision to Danny Chavez at UFC 252 in August. The odds are fairly close on this one, but Kamaka is the slight favorite. He is minus 150, minus 155 or so, and you can get Brown on the comeback at plus 135. Keith, who do you like in this one and how?
Well, I like the matchup, first of all. This is I almost picked this one as my fight tonight. This is a really intriguing matchup. I think we have some really fun scrambles. I'll start with Kamaka. Kamaka is pretty well-rounded. He fights behind a high guard defense, decent power. He has a wide variety in his attacks. I love that he doesn't just headhunt. He will target the body. He makes it a big part of his game. And he loves getting in the pocket and unloading power shots. Specifically his hooks. I go back to the Tony Kelly fight. I think that was such a fun fight. But he was blasting Tony Kelly with his left hook over and over again. Because he does enjoy a brawl, he gets hit a lot. He's willing to eat one to take one. I love that he looks for step-in knees. I love that he like the fighter we were just talking about, Labumi. He throws teep kicks down the middle. He's also very just physically strong. You see him; he's absolutely ripped. He's shredded. He's a big guy for the weight class. He does have a former background in wrestling. He's an NCAA wrestler, though he's been taken down by much lesser wrestlers because of his brawling style. Like he kind of wings it. He has a little Dan Henderson in him where he starts letting the hands go and suddenly lesser wrestlers are taking you down. Also, he gassed out against, and he still won, but he gassed out against Tony Kelly. Now, mind you, that was a brawl. That was a nonstop action brawl. And then a little bit in his last fight against Jonathan Pearce is probably why he lost. He started getting taken down by a lesser wrestler and then ground and pounded because he was tired. Now, move on to TJ Brown. TJ Brown is a guy from the Contender Series, as you mentioned. He was one of the guys I liked in the Contender Series coming in. He's your classic wrestle boxer. He has a short jab. Like he doesn't really extend up, but it's quick. He uses it more in the pocket. Nice straight right. He's got some power in his straight right. Throws lots of kicks for a wrestler. Likes to sneak in the high kick. Though I think there's a lot of negatives defensively. He drops his hands. He keeps his chin high. He's seemed to be rocked in every single fight he's been in. He is a solid wrestler. He can catch a kick and take you down that way, or he just has a good reactionary double. He's an entry guy. He's going to come in on your hips and drive. I like that he chain wrestles together, takedown attempts. He doesn't just shoot one shot and give up. He'll, tap the leg, you change your stance. He comes across the other side. Like he's very good at chain wrestling. You can see he's just a very good wrestler. But when he gets you down, solid top control. He mixes in ground and pound and submissions well. He's not one or the other. And he's a threat on the ground. He's got 9 submission wins with like the head and arm triangle kind of being his go-to. This is a really good fight. It's a battle between two guys that when they came into the UFC, I kind of liked both of them going forward. Like Brown's much better than his record indicates. However, I've been pretty disappointed with their performances. Like I feel like even though I just said he's better than his record indicates, you still need to get results. And I feel the same with both these guys. I feel like they're not getting the results. Brown is probably the better wrestler, even though Kamaka comes from a NCAA background. I think Kamaka is probably the better overall striker, and he's a little bit bigger and more physically imposing. Both the guys are inconsistent, so I don't have any trust in this. But man, I'm literally looking at my notes and picking Kamaka, and I go, I don't trust him. I want to go with Brown, and then I'm like, no, I don't want to take Brown. I don't trust him either. So can I pick a draw? Like some weird thing happens and it's no. You know what? Either way, I'm gonna pick the wrong guy. So give me Kamaka. That was what I have in my notes.
Excellent. Is that a decision?
Yeah, a decision.
You know, I see their respective skill sets very much the same way you do. The place where I'm going to differ from you is that while, I mean, Kamaka just looks ripped and he looks like a specimen, I think Brown is going to be the visibly larger guy in the cage. I think he's going to be, I don't know what the reach will look like, but I think he's going to be a little taller, a little broader, just a heavier looking guy. I fully expect Kamaka to win the first round easily. And probably any way he wants. If he wants to keep it on the feet, he's got, faster hands and feet. I think has a more complete arsenal of strikes and, will probably piece Brown up for that first round, especially as Brown just comes straight at him. My question will be if he fades later on, because that makes his defensive wrestling, which already, as you pointed out, isn't as good as it might be for a guy whose offensive wrestling is as good as Kamaka's. Yeah, I'm going to take Brown in this one, and I'm going to take Brown by losing the first round and probably winning the second and the third. If Kamaka gets tired enough, maybe we even get some sort of just like mercy kill finish as he's exhausted on the ground. But Brown is the guy that I feel safest saying is fighting for his job on this card. And I'm picking him to get the thing done and keep his place in the UFC for at least another fight. Give me Brown by decision.
So I'm so happy I went with Kamaka so we could have some difference. It would suck that I switched my pick to the same guy you picked.
Well, as you started to talk yourself into Brown, I was like, oh, no, are you kidding me? But having said that, by fight night, we'll probably forget who we picked because this fight is just so close and weird to pick.
It's going to be a frustrating one. It's just going to be frustrating. But it's going to be frustrating, but also fun.
Yes, I totally co-sign on that one. Staying in the featherweight division, next one up at UFC on ESPN 23 features Gabriel Benitez versus Jonathan Pearce. Benitez, the 32-year-old Mexican, is 22-8 overall. He is 6-4 since joining the UFC out of the first season of Tough Latin America. Fought twice last year. He lost a decision to Omar Morales at UFC Fight Night Smith versus Teixeira back in May. Came back and put away Justin James with a crushing knee to the body and then some elbows at UFC on ESPN 19 in December. He'll be taking on Pearce. The 28-year-old is 10-4 overall. He is 1-1 since joining the UFC out of season 3 of Dana White's Contender Series back in 2019. His UFC debut was spoiled by the ageless Joe Lozon, who just completely thrashed him in about 90 seconds. Came back and knocked out Kai Kamaka, whom we just finished talking about at UFC on ESPN 18 back in November. The odds on this one do favor Benitez. He is minus 210. You can get Pearce at plus 170 or plus 175 or so. Keith, who have you got in this one?
Well, before I break down this fight, I gotta apologize to Colares in the first fight. I referenced him as being Mexican, as I remember there was a Mexican on the card. He's not Mexican; he's Brazilian.
But closer to Mexico is also closer to Brazil. So,
that is true.
Okay.
That is. What happens is he has such a Mexican, the classic Mexican style, and Colares is, similar to a Spanish last name. For some reason, I remember there was a Mexican on the card, and he fights more like the classic blood and guts Mexican. Benitez is kind of the opposite. He's a southpaw who's very technically sound. He's not a brawler at all. He uses movement really well. Sets up. He's got a really good jab. It's probably his best weapon. Accurate left hand. His power, his back rear punch, left hand. Not a lot of tells. Everything's short, quick. Nice power. He works the body. He loves to go with body kicks, and he has elite leg kicks. I mean, that's what he always. As soon as he comes out, the commentary team is going to be talking about his leg kicks. He's a good grappler. He doesn't use it nearly enough, but training with American Kickboxing Academy and all the wrestlers there, you're going to have some wrestling. Move over to Pearce. Pearce is contender series guys. I'm very familiar with him. Pretty athletic, more athletic than his physique looks. He doesn't. He's not really. Even though he's a lightweight guy, he's not shredded. Decent jab, accurate right hand. Though he's boxing, I still say it needs a lot of work. He's mostly a kicker. That's his main tool from the striking. He throws a lot of kicks. He likes to throw a flying knee. Has a lot of defensive holds. He gets hit a lot because he lacks head movement. Can drop his hands at time. He is solid in the clinch. It's like a safe zone for him. It's actually where he did well against Kamaka. Go grind in the clinch, kind of just lean on you. He's got some good violence in the clinch. He's just what's the word I'm looking for? Just a violent, get in there, slicing elbow, knee.
He's a mauler. He's a mauler in there.
There you go. That's a good word. Mauler. Yeah, he's a grinding mauler. He'll give you that short Charlie horse, with the knee to the leg. He will look for body lock takedowns. That's where his wrestling comes in, not necessarily on entries. I've seen him do a lot of lateral drops on the regional scene, which will not work in the UFC, especially the higher he goes up. But I would say his wrestling is okay at best because he's limited in his attacks. Once he's on top, he looks to pass guard. Busy ground and pound from on top. But if he's taken down, he gives up his back to get up, which is obviously very dangerous. And his cardio is questionable. He has slowed down in fights, even fights on the regional scene, that he was much better, than the guy he was going against. So we've been talking about the odds, and we always give out the odds for the card. And it's funny because I'm looking at the odds, and for this card, the biggest favorite, I think, is Sean Strickland. No. Oh, Luma Lubukme. Sorry. And honestly, I don't, and I've been saying a lot of the fights need to be closer in the odds. This is the one I think it needs to be a bigger gap. I think Gabriel Benitez should be close to a 3-1 favorite. I just can't get past Jonathan Pearce getting smoked by Joe Lozano in 2019. That still sticks in my memory, maybe because I was there in attendance. I think Benitez is going to style on Jonathan Pearce on the feet. I don't know if he doesn't turn up the volume enough at times, and I don't know if he has a killer instinct to put a guy away, but I think it's a unanimous decision. I think he gets multiple 10-8 rounds, and this is my lock of the night. Give me Benitez by decision.
Yeah, Benitez, I'd said off the top, or in the first fight, that I was kind of surprised at how long Luke Sanders has been in the UFC. Every time Benitez fights, and I kind of go scrolling back, I'm like, man, he was on the first season of Tough Latin America. He's been in the UFC for almost 7 years now. It's I just feel old when I think about that, because I think of him as part of that very first crop of guys coming out of that very first season of Tough, and now he's been in the UFC for over 6 years. I love your breakdown of his striking. Great southpaw jab, great low kicks. I see routes to victory for Pearce. Like you, I like his clinch. He's got a good tall man clinch. He understands his advantages in leverage when he gets to the clinch, and I think part of the reason for his offense from there is that he feels relatively safe there. He knows he can get an arm or a leg free to punch, elbow, knee more easily than the guy he's kind of leaning on and crushing with pressure. But between Benitez being defensively sound, between him having a evidently better gas tank, and probably just being better most places than Pearce, I'm feeling the same you are. I don't know if I see a finish here, although if Pearce gets tired sooner than I expect and Benitez just kind of keeps rolling at his deliberate pace, maybe he does get a stoppage late, but give me Benitez by a pretty lopsided decision as well. The featured prelim at UFC on ESPN 23 features the newest addition to the strawweight division against possibly the most experienced fighter in the strawweight division, as it is Luana Pinheiro meeting Randa Markos. Pinheiro, the 27-year-old Brazilian, is making her debut. She appeared on Dana White's Contender Series in November of last year, knocking out Stephanie Frausto in the first round. She is 8-1 overall. She'll be meeting Markos. The 35-year-old Canadian is an even 10-10-1 overall. She is 6-9-1 in the UFC. And after a span of several years where she basically alternated wins and losses, she is on a 3-fight losing streak, the first losing streak of any kind in her career. Although in Amanda Ribas and Mackenzie Dern, the first 2 losses there were perhaps excusable, but she lost a pretty straightforward decision to Kanako Murata at UFC Fight Night Felder versus Dos Anjos back last November. The odds do slightly favor Pinheiro, the debuting fighter here. She is out there at -175 or so. Markos at +155. The problems I see here for Markos are she does well in fights where she has a grappling advantage and where her opponent does not have too much of a strength and athleticism advantage. But that being said, Pinheiro was kind of a tough ask for her because she is a strong woman, just physically strong, explosive athlete, and she is a high-level judoka. Like, this is exactly the kind of fighter who's going to be able to chuck Randa Markos onto the ground, and then Markos won't be able to get like a nifty submission or sweep off her back to take control of the fight back. Markos is probably a more polished striker than Pinheiro at this point. She's always been a pretty willing striker. She's still not a great one, but based on what I've seen out of Pinheiro so far, she might be better than Pinheiro, but I just don't think it's going to matter. I think Luana Pinheiro is going to crash the pocket, put her hands on her, chuck her on the ground, and Markos is, still super tough, super wily. She is a very good grappler. Like, she's, even if she can't tap someone out, she's generally good at taking care of herself on the ground. The people who have tapped her out, aside from, like Courtney Casey, which, hey, it happens, and then Mackenzie Dern, who does that to everybody. So I can't pick a finish here, but I'm picking Pinheiro to look real good in her debut, make a great impression, and it'll be just us wondering kind of what's next for this much needed new face in the 115-pound division. Give me Pinheiro by a lopsided decision.
Wow. Yeah, I definitely agree with you saying when we talk about the way to beat Markos. She needs to have a wrestling advantage or just be stronger, and I don't think it's going to be the case in this fight at all. Now, on the feet, Markos is I'm saying an average striker. Nothing really jumps out to me. It kind of has mostly a boxing style. She does generate some power because she sits on her punches a little bit, and she fights in blitzes. She does good to come into her range, unload a combination, and get out. And she throws combos too. But she can win in the clinch. She can get in the clinch. She's physically strong. And she's an okay wrestler. She's not Tatiana Suarez. Sometimes she'll shoot and get stuck underneath and kind of get beat up there. And you can take her down. She's a weak defensive wrestler, though she's hard to hold down. And she has a low fight IQ. I mean, I don't trust her. I mean, look at her fight against Mackenzie Dern. She grappled Mackenzie Dern. She was initiating grappling, which was the one thing to stay away from. Now move over to Pinheiro. So she has a split decision loss. She only lost in a crowd. I watched that fight. I thought she won that fight. So I just want to put that out there. It's funny because she got the knockout on the Contender Series, so people are thinking about her striker, and she's more of a grappler. Her striking is, and I don't want to say it's a weakness because it's definitely not. But it's her like backup plan. But her striking is starting to come along pretty well. I mean, I would still say it's pretty raw, and I've seen her be gun shy at times, like really scared to pull the trigger. But when she works, she's such a good athlete that she has natural skills. I mean, she's got good footwork, by the way she moves, fast hands, good. I'd say in the pocket, like her when she gets to her range, she's pretty well. She doesn't have layers to her striking. Like she still needs to develop the outside striking and all the way in. But that mid one is with that bag range where you work the heavy bag. It seems like she probably put a lot of times in the heavy bag. She has decent power. I mean, we saw her in the last fight in the knockout. And sometimes she'll just throw to get to the clinch because that's her safe zone. That's where she excels in. She comes from a judo background. Judo background. She is a judo black belt. She's a high level judokan. She'll beat you up in the clinch too. She'll dirty box you, and then once you start thinking about the strikes, that's when she'll step across the hips, throw. She will miss something. She's willing to try things, and that happens from a judo background. But when you miss a throw, you give up your back sometimes. So you got to watch out for that. But she's very good at winning scrambles, even when she does give up her back. And she's a submission threat in just her short career. She already has five first round submissions. I'm kind of down on Markos. I mean, she's 35. She looked terrible in the last 3 fights. In fairness, she did face some high level competition. Like she fought some pretty good girls. But I feel like she's declining, and Pinheiro's on the rise. And as long as Pinheiro doesn't get out wrestled, which I don't think she will, I think Pinheiro wins. I say she lands some good shots in the feet, and I also think she wins the takedown battle. So give me Pinheiro, give me getting a, this is a tough matchup in her UFC debut, but I think she gets a unanimous decision.
The main card opens up with a flyweight matchup with Poliana Botelho taking on Luana Carolina. Botelho, the 8-3 32-year-old Brazilian. She's 3-2 in the UFC. Fought just once last year, losing a unanimous decision to Jillian Robertson at UFC Fight Night Ortega versus Korean Zombie back in October. She'll be taking on Carolina, the 27-year-old from Sao Paulo, is 6-2 overall. She is 1-1 since joining the UFC out of the the first season of Dana White's Contender Series Brazil. She won her debut by unanimous decision over Priscila Cachoeira, then lost via a alarming and scary knee bar to Ariane Lipski last July at UFC Fight Night Figueiredo versus Benavidez 2, where she appeared to be the last person in the building to realize how much danger her knee was in. Anyway, they come into this fight. Botelho, a substantial favorite. She is out there at -225. Carolina around +185 as the underdog. Keith, who do you have in this interesting main card opener?
Yeah, I'm really surprised having 2 lower level fighters in the UFC open up the card. Especially like it makes no sense coming after Markos and Pinheiro. And Markos is a much bigger name. Pinheiro, I think, is a better prospect than these girls. Like that fight would have made more sense, but what do I know? Botelho, she's an aggressive Muay Thai striker. Hard body kicks, hard leg kicks. She showed a pretty solid clinch game against Pro Gonzalez. Solid takedown defense in that matchup. But if she's taken down, she really struggles on the bottom. I think about she was doing well against Jillian Robinson until Jillian Robinson started taking her down. And then the fight was pretty much over. That happens in fans. Happens to a lot of people against Jillian Robinson. But when it comes to fights, this is the one I was least interested in. And sometimes you just gotta have to sacrifice film study. And this is the one that I sacrificed film study on that I wasn't too intrigued in. Move over to Carolina. Long and lengthy fighter. She's more of a kickboxer. She likes to outbox. She wants to be on the outside and use her range. She likes teep kicks to keep her distance, hard leg kicks. But if you get all the way in on her, she can use her height in the pull clinch. But if you get her to the ground, as you mentioned, she's really bad on the ground. Like she looks like a fish out of water. As far as prediction, like this is the one I said that I didn't do a lot of film study. I kind of had to blitz through one. This is the one I blitzed through. I'll take Botelho with zero confidence. But as far as betting goes, like Botelho should not be as big of a favorite over anybody because she's not that good. Like I'm looking at the odds as you mentioned. She's
over 2-1 favorite.
Like yeah, she's trending to go bigger. Like since they opened up, it's been trending, opening up bigger and bigger. Like she might be 3-1 by the time. She shouldn't be a 3-1 favorite over anybody. So like if I'm betting on Carolina or nothing. Now as far as just for this to get an official prediction, I'll take Botelho, but with zero confidence.
Yeah, I mean this, and I don't say this to crap on these fighters. I mean they're out there fighting the best they can and doing the best they can for their careers, but neither of these women has a win over a UFC level fighter. I mean, Botelho is 3-2 in the UFC, but she's beaten Pearl Gonzalez, who went 0-2 in the UFC and was out. Siri Kondo lost 3 straight in the UFC and she was out. Lauren Mueller lost 3 straight in the UFC and she was out. Like Carolina, she beat Priscilla Cachoeira, who I thought at the time was probably the worst flyweight the UFC had ever signed. And then, lost to Ariane Lipski. I mean, I don't know if either of these two will be cut with a loss, but I'd be surprised if either of them was still in the UFC a year from now. They just haven't shown to be UFC level flyweights. Having said that, I mean, they're both strikers with surprisingly good power for the division. From what I've seen of them, Botelho is, a little more, refined based just on that. And really, you talk about the deficit in film study. I have seen all their UFC fights, and that's kind of the extent of it. And Carolina on Contender Series. But based on that, I think Botelho knocks her out. Give me Botelho by second round knockout. We move up one weight class and several wide notches in terms of fight stature as Merab Dvalishvili and Cody Stamann meet in a match of 135-pound fringe contenders. Dvalishvili, the Georgian by way of Long Island, is 12-4 overall. He is 5-2 in the UFC. Most notably, he lost his first 2 in the octagon, and he's been on a 5-fight tear ever since, beating Terrion Ware, Brad Katona, Casey Kenny, Gustavo Lopez, and most recently, back in August, John Dodson in a fight that caused Keith to swear off of watching John Dodson fights for the rest of his life. He'll be meeting Stamann. The 31-year-old from Michigan is 19-3-1 overall. He is 5-2-1 in the UFC. He did lose his last fight, but that was against bantamweight contender Jimmy Rivera, a weight class up on short notice for both men at 145. So make of that what you will. Before that, he did have a win over Brian Kelleher and a majority draw against Song Yadong. The odds favor Dvalishvili pretty heavily here. He is minus 240, where you can get Stamann at plus 200 on the comeback. Keith, you're shaking your head. Are you shaking your head because I brought up the name of John Dodson, or because you think something is wrong with this line? Tell me about this fight.
Yeah, I think the line is way off. Like, I don't think Stamann should be like, and nobody should be a negative 240 over Stamann. Like, the best guys in the division shouldn't be that high. Like, now, I'm not saying he's gonna win. I just think I'll start with him. He's looked good as he's moved to 145. He's used a lot of movement. He can cut angles really well. He has some fast hands. He's added a jab recently to his game. He throws hard, tight hooks in the pocket. He's been adding a sneaky high kick behind those strikes. He doesn't fight off his back foot well. That's in recently the fight that I've seen him not be successful was against Brian Keller when Brian Keller was able to press the action, though it wasn't that long in the fight. But when he was able to get force him on his back foot, I said the last time we broke down Stamann, I mentioned that he's a good wrestler, great entries, good at winning scrambles, and this is a guy that I'm not saying he can match Merab's wrestling, but he definitely has a background there. Now Merab, I want to say he's 5-2 in the UFC. I think should be 7-0.
Yes.
I know I say it every time we do Merab fights. I thought he got screwed against Frankie Saenz. I guess he got screwed against Ricky Simon. He really could be 7-0 and probably should be high in the UFC rankings. And I just want to put that out there. Merab is fun to watch. I know a lot of people hate it, takedown, rinse and repeat, but people always forget all the stuff he does before that. Lots of movement, reckless abandon, throwing wild winging punches. He looks for the knockout early, and then he's like, all right, I'm gonna throw 3 haymakers, then I'm gonna shoot on your hips. That's what he does. But he'll throw a spinning back fist. I don't know. He goes crazy, flying knees, and he uses all this stuff to kind of force you back and kind of on the defense. And then that's when he shoots him with a takedown, where he's relentless on his takedowns, closes the distance so well, and he has insane cardio. That's the thing. But despite his wrestling, take away that wrestling is not his strength. It's his insane cardio, because his cardio can complement his wrestling. His wrestling can go deep when the guy stops fading, because he keeps kicking, pressing on, and we know how wrestling drains guys. If he gets to the fight to the ground, he'll either sit in your guard, half guard, landing up shots from there. He's comfortable in that position. He has that with Randy. They always quote Randy Couture, where he'd rather sit in half guard. It seems like Merab has the same thing. That says, for a guy who's such a dominant wrestler, he doesn't have the best control. There's a reason why he has so many takedowns, because guys get back to the feet very well. As far as the prediction is, this is a great matchup. I think it should be a pick'em. I really do. I think it should be a pick'em. I think there's a lot of things Stamann can do to hurt Merab, especially on the feet. He's more technically sound. He's tighter. His punches are much tighter. He's one that could probably put Merab on his back in the wrestling exchanges. However, I don't know if Stamann can keep up with the cardio. Can he fight off the takedown defense, the takedowns for 15 minutes? Can he do that? I don't know. I haven't seen anybody able to do it yet with Merab. So I will say Merab. I think it's going to be fun early or competitive early, and then Merab will do what Merab does. And then he'll, 3-4 minutes in, he's missed a bunch of takedowns. Then he finally gets the takedowns. It becomes easier and easier as the fight goes on. So give me Merab by decision. I think it's going to be the fight of the night. I think there's going to be some really fun scrambles between Merab and Stamann. But as a betting man, and I know this is not a betting show, there's a lot of really good betting advice shows. I mean, you can go over to SureDog and get Jay Petrie's article that he does everywhere there, the Prime Picks, to get betting odds and betting advice. But if I was forced to bet on this fight, I'm betting Stamann with the as big of a plus odds he is. So to me, this is a dog to pass play, as they say, as the cool hipsters say, the cool betting hipsters say. But yeah, give me Merab in my fight of the night.
You said what I was going to say better than I could have, because cardio is absolutely what makes everything run for Merab. He's famed as a wrestler, probably just because he looks wrestly and he has a difficult to pronounce last name for most Americans, but his wrestling game only runs the way it does because of cardio. As you pointed out, he's not great at keeping people down. Once he gets them down, it leads to scramble fest. And if he didn't have the gas tank he does, that would be the kiss of death for him. Because, you're the one getting tired if you're pursuing takedowns and the guy just keeps getting up easily, but instead the other guy's getting tired quicker. It's also what allows him to be such a wild man on the feet. He has good beard. He isn't afraid of being taken down himself, because he's fine scrambling, and he knows it's not going to wear him out, at least not as much as the other guy. Those are all things that do work in his favor against Stamann. But yeah, I think Stamann's going to take advantage of some of that wildness early on. And I think Merab might get touched a few times early, maybe even rung up a little bit. He's shown to be extremely durable, so I don't think that's the route to an upset or anything. But yeah, should be a wild fight, should be a great fight. But Give me Merab just by pulling ahead later, just by having the better gas tank and the ability to rinse and repeat, where Stamann, it's not like he has bad cardio, but there's a difference in level here. They call Merab the machine for a reason. I'm picking him to show it and win a decision here. Next up, it is middleweights and a battle of two men who have come roaring back from obscurity to be factors in this division again. It is Sean Strickland against Krzysztof Jotko. Strickland, the 30-year-old, is 22-3 overall. He is 2-0 since coming back from a serious motorcycle accident that took him out of the sport for almost exactly 2 years. He showed back up on the UFC's Halloween card last fall and took a unanimous decision over Jack Marshman. He then turned around 2 weeks later and knocked out Brendan Allen in a 195-pound catchweight fight. Allen himself, one of the best prospects in the middleweight division. And with that, Strickland announced his presence in the UFC once again in emphatic fashion. The story of Jotko, not quite so dramatic, but just as impressive in its own right. Jotko, the 31-year-old from Poland, is 22-4 overall. He is 9-4 in the UFC. And 3 years ago, he was riding a 3-fight losing streak. And this at a time when that usually meant a pink slip in the UFC. But since then, he has won 3 straight over increasingly tricky opposition in Alan Amadovsky, Marc-Andre Barrio, and most recently, last May, Eric Anders, whom he beat via unanimous decision at UFC on ESPN 8. The odds in this one do favor Strickland pretty heavily. He is minus 250. You can get Jotko as the underdog at plus 210 or plus 215 or so. Keith, who do you like in this one, and how do you think it plays out?
Yeah, I'm intrigued by this one, and this has some sneaky relevance to the middleweight rankings. Has a little sneaky relevance to the Sherdog rankings, where the winner of this matchup could be taking one of the spots on the Sherdog rankings. I'm assuming, you know. And you mentioned that Sean Strickland beat Brandon Allen. That was a good win when it happened, but it has aged great, recently, as Allen looked great just last week. Strickland's a kickboxer. He's a guy that for a long time we always heard about how talented he was, but never lived up to it. And now we kind of starting to see him live up to it. Now, beating Jack Marshman, yeah, that's a great win. But beating Brandon Allen the way he beat Brandon Allen, that's opening your eyes. He fights very well from 2 distances, either on the outside where he can work all the way in like a clinch area. He's good in those 2 ranges. He used to be accused of being a slow starter, and I don't think that's the case anymore. I think he's a builder. I think it appears that he starts off slow. I just think he likes to set traps, find the openings, and then he picks up the volume once he knows what's going to land. And that's what it seemed like he did, especially against Jack Marshman in their fight. He's got a really good jab. I would put it on the elite level. At least his last 2 fights. Got some solid power. You see the shot that crumpled over Brandon Allen. They're just short, not a lot of tells, straight shots. And he's a good wrestler. And in the clinch, he can get in the clinch. He can work in the clinch. He can grind you in the clinch. And he's got some good wrestling and got some good grappling, though we don't see it enough because, especially recently, his striking has been so on point. Now, move over to Jotko, southpaw. I would say he's pretty fast, pretty athletic. Similar to Strickland, where he's throwing straight punches down the pipe. I like his check right hook coming from the southpaw stance. I would say he lacks power, though. He's not a one punch knock you out kind of guy. He's been rocked several times. He's been around the block for a while. He's got a lot of miles on him. He doesn't like being pressured, and he doesn't handle pressure good at all. He will actually back right up to the fence. It's a terrible technique, but he likes to get in the clinch. So if he can use that, them over pursuing to help him close the distance, then it would actually work out for him. He likes to grind in there. We've seen him spend, it seems hours in the clinch. He did it with the Eric Anders fight and the David Branch fight and stuff, and just get in the clinch, and that's because he has good hip control. He controls his hips and his opponent's hips pretty well. He got a couple of leg sweeps in there, and he's good at winning scrambles and scrambles too. Now, who am I picking to win? I like Strickland. He looks so good lately, and even though Jotko's on a little bit of win streak, he hasn't been that active compared to Strickland lately. It seemed like not only is Strickland looking great, his confidence seems really building. He wants to be out there as much as possible. He wants to make up for missed time, and I think he has a speed advantage. I think he can avoid the clinch. I think he can use that jab not only as offense, but use it as his first line of defense. When someone's trying to close a distance, you jab him in the face. It's kind of hard to get through. And I think he'll start touching with the jab, start touching the jab, hiding that right hand, and then he's going to land that right hand, which will obviously be open even more against southpaw. And I think that'll be the kill switch. So give me Strickland. Give me to knock him out in the second round.
I love what you put out there about kind of Strickland's offense on the feet. One thing that I love about him since he's been back, I mean, for one thing, when somebody comes back from an injury that takes them away for 2 full years and their knee just got completely shredded, first thing you want to know is, well, I mean, can you still move on your wheels? Clearly he can. The thing that I like even better is that it appears to have sent him up to middleweight for good. Because really, Sean Strickland has always been dazzling in moments, but his UFC career is really the story of 2 different Sean Stricklands. Yeah, I mean, he's 9-3 in the UFC, but really he's like 4-3 at welterweight and like 5-0 at middleweight. Like all 3 of his losses, and none of them are bad losses. I mean, Santiago Ponzinibbio, top 10 guy. Eliseo Capoeira, top 10 guy, at least at the time. He was like in the middle of a 7-fight win streak. And Kamaru Usman, that's it. And he still, beat like the Court McGee's and Nordine Talebs of the world.
Sorry, who did you say? Who was the third guy?
Kamaru Usman.
Oh yeah. Now is he doing anything? You said.
I think
the other 2 guys were good. You said other 2 guys were good losses, but with that Usman guy, has he done anything?
I think he fought last week. I'd have to look up what happened.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Sorry, we're older men. We have dad jokes.
But at welterweight, Strickland looks like a guy who can beat anyone on any given day. But he did hit his ceiling against kind of the top 10ish guys he took on. At middleweight, that's simply not the case. His power still carries over, as you pointed out, and his speed advantage is even greater, if anything else. And I just don't feel as though he's even at a strength disadvantage there. He's still like kind of a tall, rangy guy. I mean, I know he's just like 6'1", but he just looks like he should be taller than that. He's got a wingspan on him, and I think he's a even better middleweight than he was a welterweight. So I'm glad to see him kind of buckling in there. And as nice of a story as Jotko has been, Strickland just has all the advantages here. I think the speed differential on the feet is going to be stark. I think the power differential, Jotko can load up and knock someone out, but Strickland has that just effortless power that just comes from mechanics and good technique. Just you can tell that everything hurts. And I think, as you pointed out, he's a builder. I think that's part of why, because just 2.5 rounds of just regular kickboxing with the guy just leave you marked up and hurt, and you're just feeling all of it. What round did you say?
I went second round.
All right, I'm going to say Jotko makes it to the third. Again, he's on a great streak of his own, but just Eric Anders and, the fighters he's beaten, Marc-Andre Barrio have not prepared him for what he's going to run into against Sean Strickland. I expect that after a round or so, he's going to be reduced to trying to get this thing to the ground any way he can. It's not really what he's built for, and he's not going to be able to do it to Strickland. Strickland knocks him out in the third. Third from the top of this UFC Vegas 25 card, it is a light heavyweight scrap between Ioan Cutelaba and Dustin Jacoby. Cutelaba, the 27-year-old Moldovan, is 15-6 with 1 no contest. He is 5-5 in the UFC. He fought just twice last year and had a pretty weird year by any standards. He met Magomed Ankalaev at UFC Fight Night 169 back in February. He lost by TKO in about 30 seconds when his strategy to make it look like Ankalaev had hurt him really badly worked on the ref, leading to an early but sort of justifiably early stoppage. They rematched in October, and Ankalaev knocked him out the honest way, still in the first round, putting a definitive end to that weird rivalry. And he will be met by Jacoby. The 33-year-old Factory X product is 14-5 overall. Dustin Jacoby is 2-2 in the UFC across 2 separate stints with the promotion. He went 0-2 quite a few years ago and has been 2-0 since his return. Notably, he is 4-0, including those 2 UFC wins and an appearance on Dana White's Contender Series since returning from a 4-year self-imposed hiatus during which he worked as a professional kickboxer. Kudalaba is a slight favorite here. He is -130. You can get Jacoby at +110 as the slight underdog. I'll just flat out say it. I did not place much stock in Dustin Jacoby going into his Contender Series appearance, and even coming back from his Contender Series appearance. Like against Justin Ledet, I think I did favor him to win just because Ledet, much love for a Houston guy, but he's just, he hasn't shown to be able to hang with UFC light heavyweights. But he schooled Ledet, and then he schooled a guy that I actually was kind of high on in Maxime Grishin just back in February. Basically, I mean, he's a guy that disappeared into kickboxing for 4 years, and he came back a transformed fighter. He is an outstanding kickboxer now. His kicks are the real revelation to me. He destroyed Ledet with kicks, before finishing him off with punches. He's just not the guy that my last memory of him was getting steamrolled by King Mo and John Salter in Bellator. It's just, a slight difference in odds here, but I'm picking him to beat Ion Kudalaba. Kudalaba to me is just a still pretty raw brawler, and he's pretty raw everything. For a guy that now has well over 20 fights, he feels like a 5-fight veteran. He is a wild brawler on the feet that gets by because he has just numbing power just by being as jacked a guy as he is. He's a pretty good offensive wrestler when he needs to be, just because he is athletic and strong, but he's not a very good defensive wrestler. I think Jacoby's just going to piece him up on the feet. Kudalaba is not going to be able he's not going to be able to respond on the feet. He's not going to be able to get it to the ground, if he wants or needs it to. It isn't much of an upset, but this is my upset special because I feel pretty strongly that this is going to continue the coming out party for Dustin Jacoby. I really like having the presence of a fighter like him in the light heavyweight division. Even though he's not young, he feels like a fresh face. We're desperate for people that have not already fought everybody else in the top 15 or 20 fighters. And he is that fresh face, and he's kind of a fresh style compared to a lot of the other guys. Give me Dustin Jacoby by a pretty lopsided decision.
Wow. All right. So before I talk about the fight, I want to talk about Justin Ledet. This guy was 3-0 as a heavyweight, 0-4 at light heavyweight, man. Go back to heavyweight. I don't know if he's still in the UFC, but man, he had a speed advantage at heavyweight. I mean, be undersized, it was working for you. Anyways, back to this fight. I'll start with Kudalaba. At this point, we kind of know what we get with this guy. He's crazy explosive. He's extremely aggressive, comes at his opponent like a berserker, throws hard, hits very hard, loads up on everything. If he catches you, he can put your lights out in one blow. But he gasses himself out because he's constantly trying to finish the fight in, I don't know if he gets paid more money if he finished it quicker, or if he's I don't know. I feel like he's like a Pac-Man when you hit the little thing and you can eat the ghost and you have to hurry to get them. That's him. That's Kudalaba. He's you're blinking and it's going they're blinking, they're about to end off, so that's what he wants to do, try to get as many as he can. I don't know what it is, but they'll mention his Greco-Roman wrestling background. We talked about this last time that he went against Ankalaev. You don't ever see it. So I'm just going to ignore that he has it because, one, I've seen him out wrestled easily, and two, I don't know what it is. If he gets on top, though, he's got a little Derek Lewis clubbing ground and pound. So he probably should use his wrestling more because he's a dangerous guy on top. Now, move over to Jacoby. as you mentioned, Contender Series guy, felt the same way when they announced him in the Contender Series. I was like, really, Justin Kobe? Like, I actually remember, like, wow, how do I know that name? And I had to look him up, and I was like, oh yeah, this guy fought in the UFC. Like, oh, he hasn't fought in like 4 years. Like, oh yeah, he's like in his 30s. Like, what the hell? Why are they adding this? But he's done well as he moved up. He is undersized as he was a former middleweight. But the first thing that jumps out to me is besides his kickboxing offensively is his defensive skills. He's hard to hit because he has two really good lines of defense. First is his lateral movement. He uses his footwork well. He moves away from shots. Even if you hit him, a lot of times they're glancing shots as he's moving away. And the second line of defense he uses is he parries punches. So he uses his hands well, and I've talked about parrying punching, so I'm assuming a lot of people who listen to this knows what I'm talking about. If you don't, hit me up on Twitter, and I'll try to explain what parrying punching is. But he and then on the offensive side, he's very, you see his glory kickboxing experience. He cuts angles when he attacks. He doesn't come straight on the line. He'll throw his lead left will be on the straight line, and then he's cutting to the right to throw his right. Jab, as we've talked, kind of been a theme tonight. A lot of really good jabbers on this. Guys who throw jabs. He's one of them. Everything comes off his jab. He sets up the jab, then the straight punches come right down the pipe to follow. He throws combinations. I love that he just touches with it, and then when an opening, that's when he unloads. And that's where you see the highest level of boxing. You see that in boxing all the time. Guys don't load up on everything. They touch, and then when they explode, like a guy like Canelo Alvarez, he doesn't throw hard every single punch. And then when it's there, then he unloads. But also, he's got a whole kicking game, too, especially the calf games. He goes after the calves. Go back to the Justin Ledet. Your boy Justin Ledet took him out with leg kicks. He was kicking his calf out. It only took like 2 or 3 minutes, and he was done. As far as on the ground, it's been a long time since we've really seen him challenge on the ground. But when we did, he was a weak wrestler. But he had a pretty good get-up game, and guys struggled to keep him down. So as far as prediction goes, this is going to come down to Jacoby if he can handle the 3 minutes balls to the wall style of Cutelaba. And that is, to me, is a huge if. Like that, I'm not glazing over that. Like if Cutelaba runs at him and knocks him out in like a minute, that would not surprise me. If he knocks him out in 20 seconds, wouldn't surprise me. However, I'm with you, man. I think Jacoby's going to survive it. And then I think Cutelaba is going to slow down. And when you have a high-level striker like Jacoby start jabbing you and leg kicking you into oblivion, it's going to be a scary thing. And I wouldn't be surprised if he stops Cutelaba with leg kicks. I'm going to say he does. You went with the upset special. This is also my upset special, as I've also taken Mr. Dustin Jacoby, and I'm going to say he stops him with leg kicks.
We now come to the co-main event. It is a featherweight scrap featuring the veteran Cub Swanson versus the red-hot up-and-comer Giga Chikadze. Swanson, the 37-year-old Californian, is 27-11. He is 12-7 in the UFC. Most recently, he has been on a 2-fight winning streak. He defeated Kron Gracie by unanimous decision at UFC Fight Night Jędrzejczyk versus Watterson back in October of 2019. And then just this past December, knocked out Daniel Pineda in the second round at UFC 256, Figueiredo versus Moreno. That snapped a career-long 4-fight losing streak for Swanson. Granted, all 4 fighters during that losing streak were top 10 fighters, and several of them, like Brian Ortega and Frankie Edgar, were more like top 5 fighters. But nonetheless, he has come back from possibly the brink of losing his job to be right in the thick of things again. And he is in the thick of things against Chikadze, who, somewhat quietly, maybe just a step behind the Kevin Hollands and Khamzat Chimaevs of the world, was one of the sports breakout stars of 2020. He came into the UFC at the end of 2019 and has won 5 straight fights since then. He defeated Brandon Davis, Jamal Emmers, Erwin Rivera, Omar Morales, and most recently, last November, James Krause. Not that James Krause, the other one, but he knocked him the hell out in about 4 minutes. Interestingly, this is a guy who lost on the second season of Dana White's Contender Series and obviously did not get a contract at the time, just kind of dusted himself off. took 2 fights in Gladiator Challenge out in California and made his way back to the UFC, on his own steam. The odds do slightly favor Chikadze here. He is minus 180 or so, where Swanson is plus 160 if you like him as the underdog. Keith, we were just talking, off air about this before we started recording that, you're high on Chikadze. So am I, but I think you might even have a little more enthusiasm for his game than me. And then it's hard not to root for Cub Swanson, a guy who's been at the door, so many times. And, who have you got in this one? Is Swanson a live dog? What's your thought here?
Yeah, this is a tough fight because I think it's a tough fight because there's 2 things. One, we haven't really seen Chikadze tested on the ground in a long time. So that's obviously a big concern. But also, you mentioned Swanson. He's, 2 for his last 6. And you also mentioned, well, look who the 4 losses were to: absolute studs, top guys in the division, guys fighting for the title. So it's hard to really assess where Cub Swanson is. He beat 2 up-and-comers, so there's not like he didn't take like 1 step below those top 10 guys. He took a big step down. So it's really hard. But more concerning to me than his record recently is that he's 37. Like, that still bothers me because, guys fall off a cliff. And it happens to everybody other than Tom Brady. Like, that's it. And, when I look at his skills, there's still a lot of skills I like to see. I mean, this is a guy who truly can strike from both stances. He's always had great footwork. He's always been elusive. He's always been very light on his feet. He's always had great head movement, especially considering he keeps his hands basically down by his waist, so he needs that head movement to be on point. He's had a high output. You think about the Korean Superboy, the fight he had with him, that was just nuts. And one of the greatest fights up there, top 5 all time. He's got sting on his shots. I wouldn't say Cub Swanson is a heavy hitter, but he's got sting. Like, if he catches you clean, he's going to hurt you. He might not put you out, but you're going to take a step back. He's always been impressive. Like, Cub Swanson is one of these guys who's got so many skills, but he's never – it's weird that he's always been like the next tier down because he's got some high-level skills. He's one of the best guys at striking backing up. Like, he can land. It's a rare feat, and he's one of the guys who can do it. He's always attacked the body. And then he's so freaking tough. It's Cub Swanson. I mean, he's got to be in the fight no matter what. Even the guys that are much better than him, he's going to make it a fight. He's got great heart. He's a good grappler, though he's not a wrestler, and he has been taken down by high-level wrestlers, and he struggled to get up. But when he's on the offensive side, he's pretty good. But we don't see it all. Like, the offense happens when he's scrambling with somebody. Namuva Chikadze, extremely highly decorated kickboxer. You see that instantly. He's light on his feet. He is a counter striker, and he's so well at feinting to draw out the attacks. And he's so poised. He's so calm. He sees everything. And he feints with his hands, his shoulders, his hips. Like, he does everything. He really sets him up. He's a master at what he does. And he's a sniper with his accuracy. He also can strike from both stances. He has fast hands. He's got a sting jab. Like, his jab is not just a rangefinder as some people. He has, as Josh Gersh was talking about last week with Kamaru Usman, he has a stinging jab. Like, he hurts you with his jab. He can put you out with his jab. And his overhand right, he'll start having you worry about the jab, and then his overhand right is just an absolute kill switch. It's and then what I love about him is he has 2 levels to it. He throws it from 2 different ways. So you never really know it comes. He'll throw it straight down the pipe, fast, short, not able to tell, or then he'll kind of dip and just almost whip it over the top. They get overhand right, like a we think about overhand right, we think about like Chuck Liddell or something. It's tighter than that, and it has like a whip to it. And he does it. So he attacks from both sides. You never know what angle that right hand is coming from. Kicks to the body. He'll attack the body with kicks. And we keep hearing about his improvement in grappling. that he's been, really, really focused on his grappling. I don't know. Last time I really saw him on the ground, he looked terrible. Brandon Davis was kind of giving it to him. Brandon Davis looked like Hoist Gracie. But in that time, when he ended on top, he actually beat up Brandon Davis from ground and pound. So as far as the prediction goes, I mean, if Cub Swanson, and this may be the case, like this might be when we see it, if Cub Swanson really press the action to get to the ground, then I'd feel much confident in picking Cub Swanson. However, I haven't seen it enough. So I feel the same way about this fight as I do Randa Markos versus Pinheiro fight. I feel like Swanson is on the decline, though there isn't much proof to that. I just, based on his age and the wars he's been in, I'm assuming he's declining, and I feel like Jakatsi's on the rise. And if he touches Swanson, I think he can maybe put him out, which would be an incredibly impressive feat because you just don't put out Cub Swanson. And I think it's time it's going to happen. So give me Jakatsi. I say he's going to knock him out in the first round.
Oh, man. Stealing all my thunder. I should have gone first here because I'm also going to step out on a limb and basically call for something that we've never seen. I mean, everybody obviously remembers the Jose Aldo double clutch flying knee knockout of Cub Swanson. It's really what put Aldo. It's what vaulted Aldo into a star, at least to the hardcore fans that watch WBC.
Decade ago? It was a decade ago.
Yeah. And it's still, to this day, the only time that Cub Swanson has been knocked out.
Which is incredible.
He's not some chinny dude. Yeah. Well, you talked about the Du Ho Choi fight. He's been in some absolute wars, and that is still, to this day, the only time he's been knocked out with strikes. I've actually been kind of impressed by Swanson's return. Like his 2-fight winning streak, because as we both just discussed, I mean he's only been cleanly knocked out once, but he's always been a guy that could be caught on the ground. I mean he lost a bad fight to Jens Pulver by first round submission that he had no business losing. That was supposed to be like a get him over moment for Swanson. And against Kron Gracie and Daniel Pineda, he just wasn't ever in any trouble there. I mean, Kron Gracie, one of the best grapplers of this generation. And then Pineda, a guy who was a rightful underdog, but he has the grappling equivalent of the puncher's chance. He is a venomous, aggressive, submission-first grappler who's caught a lot of people that on paper he shouldn't have. And Swanson has navigated all that with no problems. Against Chikadze, yeah, all the advantages on the feet here, I think, go to Chikadze. If I knew that Swanson was going to commit to getting this fight to the ground early and often, I might feel differently about it. But I think he's probably going to test his chances on the feet, and he's not going to like what he gets. I think Chikadze is going to hurt him early. He's going to get Swanson, rung up, out of sorts. I don't know about first round. I'm going to go with second round, but yeah, give me Giga Chikadze to just drop Cub Swanson by an accumulation of damage. And then, I mean, it could be the Frankie Edgar thing where he jumps on him, softens him up and chokes him out. But it being Giga Chikadze, I'm just going to say he's going to jump on him and finish him with strikes. Give me Giga Chikadze by second round TKO. With that, we come to our main event, a light heavyweight scrap featuring Dominick Reyes and Jiri Prochazka. Reyes, the 31-year-old, is 12-2 overall. He is 6-2 in the UFC. Both of those losses have come in his last 2 fights, however. He lost a unanimous decision to John Jones last February at UFC 247 in a very close fight that many observers thought Reyes won. He then came back and fought Jan Blachowicz for the title vacated by Jones at UFC 253 in September and did not fare nearly as well, getting busted up by legendary Polish power in the first round and knocked out in the second. He will be taking on Prochazka, the 28-year-old from the Czech Republic and former Ryzen Fighting Federation light heavyweight champ, is 27-3-1 overall. He is 1-0 in the UFC, having knocked out Volkan Oezdemir early in the second round of their meeting at UFC 251. Prochazka is a slight favorite here. He is minus 130, where you can get Reyes around plus 110 as the underdog. I'm going to throw this fight to you for your prediction first, but something I just wanted to point out before that is, again, just referring back to the column I wrote this week because it's what's on my mind as I think about these fights. This is a great example of a fight that, even though it's pretty closely matched, I mean, you look at the odds, they're near a pick'em. The stakes, like the risk and reward, are very different for the two guys involved. If Jiri Prochazka beats Dominick Reyes convincingly on Saturday, he might well be fighting for a title in his next fight. That is not the case for Reyes, no matter what he does to Prochazka. That loss to Blachowicz is too fresh. Also, because Prochazka came over to the UFC with a Ryzen belt over his shoulder and a 6-fight win streak over pretty much UFC-level fighters kind of hanging from his belt, even if Reyes beats him, Prochazka's probably taking on another contender 4 months from now. If Prochazka beats Reyes, the UFC might have to look outside the top 10 for his next opponents. Like, this feels like a last chance for Dominick Reyes to stay in the immediate title discussion. Whereas for Prochazka, just the rewards are greater and the risk is not as great. Tell me, if you see any truth or any sense in that, and then tell me how you see this fight playing out.
You know what? That's such an interesting point. I mean, like his next fight might be against Mike Rodriguez if he loses, Yeah. And think about how compelling that is, considering just 2 fights ago he fought John Jones for the title in a fight that
2/3 of the media. I looked at it. 2/3 of the media scored it for.
I thought Reyes won.
Yeah.
And I would say you said media is majority of fans. It would have been, we throw a historic upset, so it would have been that, but not even just that. It would just been a crowning jewel of a moment because John Jones is going to lose. It's going to be the Fabricio Verdum taking out Fedor Emelianenko. That was we thought was the moment. It's a really good point. He's fighting for relevance in the division hard. Now, who I think is going to win this really, really intriguing matchup. It's one of the headlining fights that I've been really excited for a while because I really don't know how it's going to play off, and I feel the weight of what's going on in this matchup, and I love that. I'll start with Reyes. He's a great athlete. He really is. He's very, very athletic. He moves so well. Very explosive. Southpaw. Good attacks. He attacks with kicks, attacks with punches. He's got a deadly left hand. He handles pressure very well because he has a similar game to Conor McGregor. He has a step back game, fade back game, however you want to say it. He'll use your pressure to get. He uses his big, he's got big long legs. He can kind of step back, and then he steps back and then springs back forward with his powerful left hand that I said was deadly. That's what he did to Ovince St. Preux at the buzzer. It's what he got Chris Weidman over pursuing on. That's his number one weapon. But he also has tons of kicks, and he's got power in those kicks. He got power in his hands. He got power in his kicks. I mean, think about what got him on the UFC radar. It was that high kick in the LFA. He does really well because he's got long legs and he's so quick and athletic. He does really well at darting in and out of the pocket very quick. He has slowed down at times. I mean, we saw him slow down against Ovince St. Preux. He's been hittable, and we saw that against Jan Blachowicz. He backs straight up. We saw that against Jan Blachowicz. He can be too left-hand happy. We saw that against Jan Blachowicz. He doesn't like to fight in the clinch. He prefers fighting from range. But he did show enough against John Jones that it's not necessarily a weakness or it's just not a preference. He has at times overthrown his punches, which leaves him to be taken down. But if you get in on his hips, he does feel it used to be a weak takedown defense. Now it's been a strength of his. I mean, I think about when he was taken down. Even though it was extremely briefly, he was taken down by Chris Weidman. He was taken down by Volkan Oezdemir. He was taken down by Ovince St. Preux. He was taken down by Jeremy Kimball. But what I love about him is it seems like he's addressed that. John Jones tried over and over again and couldn't take him down. And he's added a Travis Brown style elbows to his game, which is huge for a guy of his height. We haven't seen much of offensive wrestling, though he does have a little bit of a wrestling background. When he has been taken down, he's scrambled back to his feet. He's still, it's weird because he's got so much talent, but he still feels like a raw product. Like he's all athleticism and speed, which is the case. That's something that can in an instant be done when you lose that. Like we've seen it with guys, someone like Shogun. Like once you lose that just a split second of speed, it's like a house of cards. You pull one card out there, everything's gonna fall when you rely on that. Move over to Yuri Prochazka. It's funny because he's so different in his style. He's very unorthodox. He uses a lot of movement, not just movement laterally with his feet, but a lot of like upper body, shoulder movement. He's very herky jerky. A little bit of Keith Jardine, not saying exactly like the same similar, but I mean he uses a lot of movement to defend, and they're not shoulder rolls. They're just weird things he does. He switches stances a lot. When he commits to attack, and I think this is this kind of distraction. I think he just kind of stays busy. What am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? What is he gonna do? And then suddenly when he strikes, it surprises you. But when he commits to attack, he really sits on his punches, which generates big power, which puts guys out. I mean, like we saw against Volkan Oezdemir. He will go to the body. He keeps his hands low though. Even when he's doing those herky jerky, his hands would kind of be a little low. He's also open to leg kicks. I go back to the CB Dalloway fight. I'm going to show up, and CB Dalloway was doing well, and he's not known for his kicks. He was actually doing well with leg kicks. And I actually think he lost. I think it was the second round is when he put out Oezdemir. I think he lost the first round. I think Oezdemir was actually doing pretty well against him. Takedown defense a long time ago, we saw him taking down a lot. I don't know if he's fixed that. I haven't seen it. I mean, he keeps knocking guys out and very quick in match. It's hard to know if he's fixed it. Kind of like what we were talking about with Francis Ngannou. But though, even going back to like the King Mo, it's like the first time he fought King Mo would take him down, but he did well to get back to his feet. So that's good. As far as the prediction goes, this comes down to me, really, and I'm probably in the minority. This really comes down to which Reyes shows up. If the guy that beat John Jones or the guy who fought OSP shows up, I think Reyes wins. I think he's too quick. I think he's too athletic. I think and Prochazka's a guy who's kind of been the faster fighter, and he's not gonna be able to match Reyes' speed. But if he's the guy that came out really flat, like he did against Oezdemir, I know one decision, but he came out really flat. In his title defense. I mean, sorry, that's how much I thought he beat John Jones. I call it title defense. In his title matchup against Jan Blachowicz, he looked really flat. If that guy shows up, Prochazka's gonna smash him. So the question is, who am I picking? I'm not completely sold on Prochazka. I said it last time. I mean, I picked him to lose last time, and obviously that didn't work out. I think I'm gonna go with a higher ceiling guy, and I think that, and I know I'm probably a minority. I think most people would say Prochazka is a high ceiling. I think it's Reyes. I mean, when you arguably beat the greatest fighter of all time, he showed what he could be that night. I think it shows up this time, and this is not one of those Alexander Gustafsson that probably won one round, and people exaggerate how well he did. I thought he won 3 rounds, maybe 4. So I think Reyes shows up. I want him to show up because I want that backstory of him beating John Jones. So give me Reyes. And you know what? I'm going to say he does it big. I'm going to say Reyes knocks him out in the second round.
I'm definitely with you on whoever wins this one wins big. Like if the best Reyes we've seen shows up, I think he's going to expose the holes in Prochazka's game that nobody's really shown him up for yet, at least recently. I mean, he got out wrestled by King Mo like 6 years ago or something, but if the wrong Reyes shows up, yeah, either way, if I were a betting man, I would take this on, finishes before the start of the third round. It's just hard for me to pick that Reyes to show up. I loved how many times in a row you had to say, like we saw in the Blachowicz fight, because I feel as though in about 6 minutes he just showed so many deficiencies in Reyes's game. Like even before the actual knockout, like how badly he marked him up with kicks that Reyes couldn't. I mean, he couldn't get out of the way of, which, I mean, if you're in the right range, it's kind of hard to get out of the way of a body kick, but never countered in a way that made Blachowicz stop throwing them. Yeah, like, God, like I just wanted to curl up in the corner and cry when I saw like the bruising on Reyes' side, which was just instant. That is something that Prochazka can do. I'm disturbed by the Oezdemir fight because even though what we see now is just that highlight where he completely flatlined him, you're right. Oezdemir won the first round, and even that doesn't bother me that badly because Oezdemir is another guy who at his very best is a top 5 level fighter, but just doesn't show up sometimes. But when he hurt Prochazka, Prochazka's reaction was just to swing wildly and try to get it all back. If he does that against Reyes and Reyes is poised, he's the Reyes who becomes a sniper as he's backing away from someone rushing at him, Prochazka's going to be face down in the first round. Again, I just don't know if I'm picking that to happen. So we both seem to agree on kind of what the general dynamic is. You're picking the right Reyes to show up. I'm picking the wrong Reyes to show up. Give me Jiri Prochazka by round 2 TKO. And he goes to, I think it'll be 25 knockouts in 28 career victories or something. But yeah, the train keeps rolling. And while there are some eras where he might not have gotten to a light heavyweight title shot, he's going to be the right guy at the right time, the fresh face, the finisher. And yeah, Prochazka wins. And for all we know, is fighting for a belt next.
Let me ask you this question before we hang up. What would be better for the UFC? And I'm not saying they're rooting for someone, but I'm saying generally speaking, as a promoter,
sure,
you kind of something.
I would slightly say Reyes. You know, he's a bit of a charismatic figure. I mean, there's a reason that he's in Toyo Tires commercials, even though he's never actually won a title. He is a magnet that might pull John Jones back into the division. Like if Dominick Reyes is wearing the UFC light heavyweight title and he can say, hey, I think I beat you. Most of these people think I beat you. That's the kind of thing that could pull John Jones into a mega fight. The UFC's got to like that, but it's not like they lose if Prochazka, does well. Like, I think it's fairly win-win for them.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Well, that will conclude the Sherdog Radio Network preview for UFC on ESPN 23, Reyes versus Prochazka. We certainly appreciate you listening. For Keith Schillen, I am Ben Duffy. Make sure to check us out either through the Sherdog front page or the directly on the Sherdog YouTube page immediately after the main event for our live breakdown. We will take your questions and comments in the live chat. Those typically go for an hour and a half to 2 hours, kind of depending on how much there is to talk about and how many questions you have. But between now and then, enjoy the rest of your week, enjoy the fights, and thank you once again for listening.